phone says it's time. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Committee of Adjustment meeting. The committee will hear applications for minor variances and consents. We'll call each application by name and number. We'll ask if anyone is here who wishes to speak regarding the application to give their name to the secretary so it can be recorded. Our decisions do not require council approval, but there is a 20-day waiting period before they're final in order to allow for appeals to the OMB. If you're the applicant or agent, you will automatically be notified in writing of the decision. If you're not either of those people and want to be notified, sign the clipboard at the back of the room requesting you be notified in writing. Just remember to push your buttons when you speak. We had complaints the last couple meetings. People couldn't hear, so we'll try a little harder. And make sure you smile for the cameras because you're on TV. Are there any conflicts of interest to be declared? No? I have a motion here by, who is it by? Let me see. By Marcel, seconded by Dennis, and resolve the minutes of the Committee of Adjustment meeting held Wednesday, June 21st, 2017, be adopted as circulated. Any errors or omissions? Those in favor? Motion's carried. Our first application today is AN049 Sunfield Homes Simcoe. Mr. McFarland, you're here for this one. I see some neighbors. Does anyone wishes to speak? Anyone else? Okay, those will be the only speakers. We'll have the planner explain the report.
This is an application to construct a commercial building with second-story residential requiring relief of 1% from the maximum permitted lot coverage of 22%, 2 residential units from the maximum permitted number of 2 units, 12 parking spaces from the minimum number of spaces of 30, and 4.1 meters from the minimum required parking area setback from a residential zone of 4.5 meters. The subject lands are 0.4 acres in size and front onto the south side of Evergreen Hill Road and the east side of Queen Street South in the urban area of Simcoe. The lands are currently vacant. Higher density housing in the forms of townhouses, semi-detached dwellings, and apartment buildings are located to the north, south, and west. Lands to the east are vacant but will be developed with semi-detached dwellings in the near future. Public input has been received for this application and was considered. Concerns outlined include the following: increased congestion in the area due to the development. The development will detract from the residential nature of the area. Snow storage was not indicated on the mapping. The density of the area is too high. The proposal will devalue homes in the area and not enough parking is included. This application was originally heard by the Committee of Adjustment on May 17th and deferred to amend the application so that the parking area setback relief could be included. The intention of the official plan is to allow for commercial uses that serve the surrounding neighborhood. The application proposes to establish a takeout restaurant and convenience store with residential uses on the second story. The subject application maintains the intent of the official plan. The subject lands are zoned neighborhood commercial with special provision 14.815. 4 variances are being requested. The first is 1% from the maximum permitted lot coverage of 22% to permit a lot coverage of 23%. The maximum permitted lot coverage in the CN zone is generally 35%. However, it was reduced on this property to 22% through a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment. An increase of 1% when generally 12% more coverage would be permitted is appropriate in this instance. Previously, at the last meeting, the committee asked why the 22% was established, and staff searched for the report and was unable to find it or determine the answer to that question. 2 residential units from the maximum permitted number of 2 units to permit 4 units is also requested. The intention of the zoning bylaw in this case is to maintain a low-density use within a developed neighborhood. However, in this case, the surrounding neighborhood is somewhat high density with apartments to the north, row houses to the south, and semi-detached dwellings to the west and soon to the east. It is appropriate for a slightly increased density within the serviced area of Simcoe. The third variance is a relief of 12 parking spaces from the minimum number of 30 spaces to permit 18. The types of commercial uses proposed, which are takeout, fast food, and a convenience store, do not require parking for long lengths of time, and as such, it is anticipated that the proposed 18 spaces will be appropriate in this situation. A high amount of foot traffic can be anticipated due to the close proximity to Holy Trinity and the higher density neighborhood. Increased walkability should result in less required parking spaces. The apartments will be small and are not expected to require multiple spaces per unit. The last variance requested is 4.1 meters from the minimum required parking area setback from a residential zone of 4.5 meters to permit a setback of 0.4 meters. The applicants cannot meet this requirement without moving the proposed building to the rear of the property. Through pre-consultation meetings, staff worked with the applicant to create a site that was more appealing from an urban design perspective, which generally means parking is not located in the front yard. Staff are of the opinion that locating the proposed building as close as possible to the street will result in a more pedestrian-friendly building and that the parking is more appropriate in the rear yard. The parking area will be buffered by fencing from the residential uses to the south. It's the professional opinion of community planning staff that the requested relief can be considered minor in nature, appropriate development, and generally meets the intent of the Norfolk County official plan and zoning bylaw. Planning staff support this application and recommend that it be approved.
Thanks very much. Any questions of the planner? Dennis?
Just one question, Mr. Chair. At the last meeting, one of the issues that caused it to be moved off the agenda was the parking issue. How has the parking improved, I guess, since a month ago, other than what you've described in the report?
Through the chair, I don't believe it was deferred because of the parking. I thought it was because one of the variances wasn't included. Oh, for the parking area.
Yes.
So, yes, so we didn't have that variance included. So it's the same layout as previously. It's just been recognized now.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of the planner? No. Okay, but now you can speak to us. Well, sorry, did you have a question?
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, to follow up on the number of parking spaces, I know in this particular case, there's relief of 18 parking spaces based on the fact that the proposed uses going in are going to be fast food and convenience store. I'm just wondering if that changes over time, is that 18 parking spaces still going to be okay? Like, let's say something else goes in there.
Through the chair, generally neighborhood commercial uses are meant to be short-term, so they're not generally something like a big store that you'd spend a lot of time in, so I believe it would be satisfactory still in the future.
Mr. Baldock, the floor is yours. So, if you'd like to ask that question, now is the time.
I got a copy of the report. I went through it. I made some comments. And rather than try to have you listen to the comments, I made a copy of the comments I made for the listeners.
Push to talk. Thank you. All right, my name's David Baldock. Hi, people. I got a copy of the report. I started to read it. I'm trying to be a logical person and say what's going on here. So I read the start, and number one, I said, you know, we've got these requests for variations, and my first reaction is why? Why wouldn't we put in a reason why? But probably that'll come up in the report. So just move on with that, except that that's a question there. Why couldn't we have a reason? Then the staff has mentioned a reason for this. Well, to me, this is a general statement. This is not a reason. When I read this, I see the words appropriate. That's a debatable item. This is just, you know, hey, we're going to go here. Minor in nature, as far as I can tell, this is not a minor in nature situation. And then, again, a general intent of the general intent. Okay, that's debatable. So we can debate those, and 2ABC will be referred to later in my comments. Under site features and land use, they mentioned some things about apartment buildings. I'm not sure which one's the apartment buildings, but maybe that doesn't matter. But really what does matter is number 3, which I put a star on. This property is unusual in that, and the report fails to mention that there's a 2-meter change in the elevation on the Evergreen Hill and Queen Street intersection to the far corner. So if you go to the intersection of Evergreen and Queen, and you stand there, and you look at the lot, Queen Street goes down, Evergreen Hill Street goes down, and the far corner over there is about 2 meters below. It requires some a serious consideration as to what is going to happen. Excuse me. Okay. To me, it would be nice if an architect was consulted and we had a report saying, hey, this is the best we can do here as a compromise. Anyway, moving on. Under pertinent circulation comments. Well, I looked at this and saw building inspector, and no comment at this time. Well, the last time there were some numbers in there, and so I called or I did some emailing, and Alicia told me that the numbers now for calculating this 22% up in number 1A, the numbers now, it says July 19th, that's when I got these numbers, 337.81 and 1604.37. And when I divide that, I get 0.21, which is 21%. So why are we discussing this? I wasn't sure. Anyway, so there's a question there that has to be resolved. At the bottom of the page, and on your printed copy there, the very last line doesn't come out. It says 22% of the 1604 comes out to be 252, or 352. So it looks to me like if this building was 90 for the small place and 260 for the big place, you'd have 350, and you could make this work if the building was smaller. Page 2. On page 2, there wasn't much that I had a reaction to other than if you keep saying the same thing over and over, then people start to believe it. And so under the part where it says repeat under provincial policy statement, I have to say again, it's not minor, and it's not appropriate, and it's not compatible with the surrounding development. Moving on to page 3. The Norfolk County official plan. So under section 1 here, it says the commercial portion is less than 300, but it says it doesn't, again, what is the size exactly? We're not sure. There's no information that tells us it is 299 or is it reasonable? Under B part, the official plan does not limit how many apartments can be located within the building. But the official plan does limit the height. And if we don't have the apartments, we don't need the height. So, is it appropriate? We'll see. Keep going. Under number 3, there's landscaping and fencing and so on. I could not see anything on the south side where there is allowance for this. So the significant amount of landscaping and screening will be required. I agree. There are residents right beside the property. Is there going to be any allowance for significant amount of landscaping and screening on the south side? Perhaps I could take a break now and someone could answer that question. Is that reasonable here?
I guess.
Through the chair, just that question, or do you want me to go back over all your questions?
No, just this one at this
The
point.
landscaping, there's going to be fencing on that side is the buffering that's proposed. Not all the details are on the drawing that's in the minor variance. Those details are in the site plan.
Okay. Thank you. Number 7. No data to support, oh, sorry. Number 7, what's okay, yes, this is the parking issue. So number 4, I've underlined parking there. So last time there were some pieces of information in the report, and therefore it was questionable. There's no data this time, so perhaps it's the same question still about parking. Definitely there are some issues to debate as to how many vehicles the 4 apartments will require. I mean, whatever number of, I mean, I don't think it matters to me how many apartments are up there. You've got some people up there, they're going to park their cars. And some families might have 2 cars, some people might have families at Christmas time. It's going to take some extra parking for those apartments to be there. The apartments cause the problem. Got that. Okay, number 8. And that was, you just referred to the site plan approval. So I emailed and said, you know, can we see this site plan approval? So I did have a chance to look at that. And there is no fence in that is going to give us noise abatement or garbage blowing abatement or snow removal abatement. Okay, this is not a significant fence. And I didn't have a lot of confidence in this site plan report because, to quote from the site plan report, road work within the municipal right-of-way is to be completed to the satisfaction of the town of Tillsonburg. Do you want to react to that right now?
Through the chair, it's just their first submission, so that's not the final site plan. We've submitted comments to them, and that was addressed in it.
Good.
So the site plan has not been finalized at this time.
On the one I saw, it had been reviewed 10 times before this, so I'm glad it was caught this time.
I will suggest, too, that as the site plan's got 0 to do with this committee.
Yes, I can appreciate that, but I had to wait till somebody brought it up before I could bring it in. That's the end of that page. Okay, we're moving along here. So, oh, pardon me. No, we're not. The bottom of the page, again, this was split in half. I'm going to say it wasn't done intentionally, just the way the printer did it. But the intention of the official plan is to allow for commercial use and serve the surrounding neighborhood. And then you go to the top of the next page with the punchline, which is underlined, without resulting disruption to the residents. So without resulting disruption to the residents. It just, you know, the blowing of snow, the garbage and so on that's potentially coming across here is not being addressed with this application. Okay, so we go to number 10 on the right-hand side. My opinion, if it says here that this is a specific amendment for site-specific zoning bylaw amendment, was 22%. So if there was a judge looking at this information in a court, I would think he would say something that applies to something else should not even be mentioned here. So we'll ask you to ignore that information. So you've heard it, but no, you shouldn't be hearing those other lines. I've stroked it out of mine, and I've got no. It's a site-specific amendment. It should be adhered to. And the planners can't find out why it's so important, but it was important back then. It probably still is important.
Do you know why?
I do not know why.
Okay. Good. Thanks.
Recently, there's been a water evaluation around here. It could have something to do with the water evaluation. Okay, number 11. How many low buildings are nearby? Again, this is a general comment about the neighborhood. And to me, when I look around and walk down Queen Street, the houses they look like single-family homes with one story, a roof on top. This building that's proposed with the potential to be having the apartments on top makes it a huge eyesore in the community. Going to number 12, again, the parking issue, we can debate it, but there's no data for that. We need some data. Going to number 13, and this is the one that is really the minor issue. Okay, so you take 4.5 meters. Now, does anybody want to guess where 4.5 meters is?
You tell me. You're the speaker.
Okay. Now, you take 4.5 meters and reduce it down to 0.4. Now I'd like to talk to you. It's a big difference, folks. Sorry, I didn't say that into the mic. Now I'd like to talk to you. Okay? It's a big difference. It's not minor. Number 14, what about working with residents? Now, it said staff worked with, I made some phone calls, I did get cooperation when I asked for specific things, but I never had anybody come to me and say, you know, could we get your feelings on how you can make this work? So I'm happy that you're working with the other side, and I would hope that you would work with the people in the community and reach out to us, and let's see if we can solve something here. A lower building would help. So from an urban design perspective, if an architect comes in here and says, hey, we could design, I mean, the apartments could go below and underground, for example. If it's so necessary to have apartments on this site, they could be low. And the surrounding buildings in this community have several apartments that are at least half underground. Like the windows in the lower apartments are just small windows. So that's a potential possibility. So number 15, yes, okay, so when you have the issue of density, it's fairly dense over here, and it's fairly dense over here, and it's fairly, so let's have it just as dense in the corner. If you talk to the police, I think they'll say, gee, you know, we don't need more problems in this area. You don't have to just keep filling it up and filling it up and filling it up. So the argument that density is, you know, just keep pushing it, is not completely logical and completely justifiable. So in conclusion, in the opinion of this resident and a few of my friends, the relief is not minor. And below that it says 91% change is not minor. Then it says not meeting the site-specific bylaw, so the 22%. And it's not appropriate because there's nothing appropriate about the height of this building. That's the key thing. Thank you very much for your time. I'm done. Any questions? I guess, do I answer questions? Or?
If we have a specific question, we will ask you.
Thank you.
Yes? I asked before the meeting started. Oh, you got like 30 seconds. Your name?
It's Larry Simons.
Okay.
All I'd like to say is I do live up in that survey, and as far as the commercial building goes, I don't know why, because we have a commercial building over at Sobeys that's sitting empty, and that's where the kids go. Subway's over there, the chicken place, Tim Hortons, but no, we're going to have the kids congregating around the intersection throwing garbage all over. So to me, it doesn't suit a commercial building. This side of the road with the little townhouses, he hasn't actually even finished them. So why are we turning something over to him that we're going to give him the right of way to say, start buggering that up? That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Okay, so that's it for input from outside, unless you wish to add something, Mr. McMorrin, not at this point? Okay. Did you want to address any of those points, Alicia?
Through the chair, I guess with regard to the commercial use that was just brought up, that's permitted regardless of whether a variance is applied for or not. And the height is not of a question in this application either. They're allowed 11 meters whether or not they get a variance. So I just wanted to clarify those aren't issues we can really decide on today.
Okay. So what we're really dealing with is the 22 to the 23%. And we're dealing with the setback, the parking setback, that's a little bit, it says 4.5 meters down to 0.4, but it's only for the one end row of parking, is it not?
Through the chair, it's for the driveway portion on the south side.
For the drive
Yes.
path, so it's not like vehicles are going to be parked in that set. They're going to drive through that paved section. Okay.
That's the whole length of the property. So 60 meters?
Excuse me, you've had your opportunity, sir. That's it. Dennis?
Mr. Chair, just a quick question in relation to the fence. How high of a fence are we talking about here, roughly?
Through the chair, that hasn't been determined, but we can tell the applicant what kind of fence to install at the site plan stage. And with the residential around it, we would be looking for something that is adequate in this case.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we're dealing with is what the request is. And the request is 1% coverage, 2 residential units from the maximum permitted of 2, so rather than make the upstairs 2 apartments, they want to make it into 4 apartments, but that doesn't mean it's going to be bigger, it just means it's going to be smaller apartments. 12 parking spaces from the required 30 to allow for 18, which the planning department feels is fine. And that 4.1 meters that they're trying to say we're going to park cars along, they're not going to park cars there, that's going to be a driveway, but the car's going to drive on the driveway to go around the building. So it's not like a row of cars on that setback, it's just a drive-through. Those are the 4 things that we are dealing with. There was a lot more than that brought up to the committee, and the one thing that reverberates every time this application comes up, 2 months ago it was up and it was the same thing. Whoever is applying for them, and I don't know who they are, but what we've heard every time is they make a mess and they don't finish the job and they leave with trouble. That's not what we're here to deal with. I'm sorry that that's the case, but that's not what we're here to deal with. And also for the commercial zoning, it's on the property now. So we're dealing with, just to kind of clear the mud, we're only dealing with those 4 issues here. That's it. That's what our job is. So let's deal with those. Dan?
Mr. Chairman, I think the question was answered before, or the case made before. When the subdivision was approved, there was an intention to put a bit of commercial in that area. So this is it. And now it's happening. So I guess we need to do that, right? And whether it's high school students or residents walking, 3 or 4 houses away or 3 or 4 streets away, isn't that the way the town is planned? To have some commercial scattered in other areas so that people don't have to go to Sobeys or don't have to go to Walmart or wherever. They could just go to the corner store. And I think we've, kind of beat this to death. So I'm ready to make a motion to approve this as presented.
That's, your point's well taken, and as a matter of fact, it was a bigger commercial property before, and the owners had an application come here to remove 2 building lots off the other end of the property, making it a smaller commercial property. So it's actually less than what was originally intended. Eric?
I think the location of the building is probably the best spot. If the neighborhood's concerned about a 2-story building, if it's located further to the south and the parking's farther away, you're going to have the impact of a 2nd story looking into the rear yard of the condo block that's that much lower than this site. The only suggestion for improvement is maybe relocating the garbage enclosure to be farther away from that setback, but other than that, I think this is a reasonable compromise for the site, and I'll second Dan's motion.
I suppose you would take the suggestion of the garbage areas to the site plan committee. I have a motion by Dan, seconded by Eric.
Mr. Chair, just one question.
Oh,
if I
I'm
may.
sorry, yes.
Yeah. Would that be part of site plan control in relation to the garbage bin?
That would-
The location of
that
that?
would be
I'm
under
assuming
the-
it would be?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where it would be discussed and located properly.
And in relation to a traffic study, is that part of the package as well? Okay, thank you.
I'll read the motion, then if there's anyone else that wants to speak, they can. Committee members, that is. Been moved by Dan, seconded by Eric, that for application ANPL 2017049, the committee hereby approves the application for minor variance as made under Section 45 of the Planning Act as amended. And that is an application to construct a commercial building with a second-story residential requiring relief of 1% from the maximum permitted lot coverage of 22% to permit 23%, 2 residential units from the maximum permitted number of 2 units to permit a total of 4, 12 parking spaces from the minimum number of spaces of 30 to permit 18 parking spaces, and 4.1 meters from the minimum required parking area setback for from a residential zone of 4.5 to permit a setback of 0.4. In accordance with Section 45(1) of the Planning Act, the development and requested relief is considered appropriate, minor, maintains the intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw, and that public input was received and has been considered as part of this decision. That's the motion. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion? Carried. What did I do with my agenda? Okay, our next application is AN 110. It's the name of Ken and Susan Newhoff. Anyone here for this application? Thank you. Okay, we'll have the planner. We'll have the planner explain the report.
An application has been received to construct a vacation home requiring relief of 1.5 meters from the maximum permitted height of a vacation home of 7.5 meters to permit a height of 9 meters, and 2.42% from the maximum permitted lot coverage of 15 to permit a lot coverage of 17.42. The subject lands are 404 square meters in size and front onto the west side of Ordnance Avenue in Turkey Point. The subject lands contain an existing boathouse, shed, and the existing garage will be removed on the property. The applicant is proposing to construct a new cottage. The property also has an existing right-of-way easement as shown on map 3. The surrounding land uses include resort residential, hazard lands, provincially significant wetlands, and marine commercial lands. The subject lands are designated resort residential in the official plan. The intention of the official plan is to allow for minor additions, replacements of existing buildings and cottages in the resort residential designation. Surrounding cottages vary in height and size. After conducting a site inspection, staff is of the opinion that the requested relief is in keeping with the character of the neighborhood as the proposed vacation home will maintain the physical appearance of the surrounding cottages. The subject lands are zoned resort residential in the Norfolk County zoning bylaw. Originally, the applicants proposed a greater height for the cottage, but the applicants were willing to work with planning staff to reduce it. The end result of the proposed variance is not anticipated to result in negative impacts to the surrounding property owners, as the proposed single detached dwelling maintains the character of the surrounding cottages and homes. It is the professional opinion of community planning staff that the requested relief can be considered minor in nature, appropriate development, and generally meets the intent of the Norfolk County official plan and zoning bylaw. As such, planning staff supports this application and recommend that it be approved.
Rudy.
Motion for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, second. I have a motion by Rudy, second by Dennis, that we hereby approve the application. Sorry. Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Yeah, please do.
One of the things I want to make sure is that you can hear me, because it's very difficult hearing some of you. I have 5 questions regarding this particular application, which is in Turkey Point, which I believe is part of the Long Point World Biosphere Reserve, established sometime around 1992. Is that correct? Is this not in the Long Point World Biosphere?
Biosphere? I don't know. I do not know.
I do, and it is.
Okay.
Okay. one of the things that UNESCO speaks about, and also the Long Point World Biosphere Association, which both can be located on the net, is they talk about sustainability. So I have a question regarding sustainability. When the council or whoever it is makes the decision to award these violations of the existing bylaw, what measures of sustainability are they using? I mean, this fellow's talking about going to 9 meters high, so would it be conceivable to have all of the residences, cottage or otherwise, in Turkey Point, conceive them to be all 3 stories high on hazardous land with poor drainage? So what I would like are, if possible, is how are these decisions made and against what parameters of sustainability? Secondly of all, the septic capacity, once you have a 3-story building, can the area take it? If you fill it all with 3-story buildings and increase the septic capacity for all of those buildings, what is that going to do? And is that what people want to live in? Is that sustainable? I don't believe so. In terms of this particular application, I think they want to move out wider. And by the looks of it, and I've been down there, once it's wider, you can't go down the side of the building, so a fire truck couldn't get down there. So has anyone assessed the potential fire hazards for that? And the next question would be drainage. If the development is made larger, then that increased area, take the area and multiply it by, say, 40 meters of rain, 40 millimeters of rain, where is that going to go? So has drainage been addressed? Because drainage in the Turkey Point area is a major problem. As a matter of fact, there are many issues. So I guess basically what I'm saying is there's a lot of questions I have in terms of allowing these things to occur without having some form of accountability reference, some form of sustainability reference. That's all I have to say.
We need to know your name, sir.
Ian, I-A-N, Newell, N-E-W-E-L-L. And I would ask that for those of you who have microphones and wish to speak, that you would speak into them and that you would speak clearly and slowly so that the rest of us will have no form of miscommunication, that you can be heard clearly. Thank you.
Yeah, do you live in Turkey Point, by the way? Are you from Turkey Point?
I've just moved into the area. I moved into Norfolk County simply because it's embedded with the Long Point Biosphere Reserve, World Biosphere Reserve, recognized globally. And so there has to be, since it was developed in 1992, before that, they must have, how do you build on sand? What are the parameters for building on sand? How do you deal with hazardous land? What are the parameters for sustainability?
I'm sorry, I just asked if you lived in Turkey Point. Yes? No?
Am I from?
Turkey Point, I just wondered if you're from Turkey Point. It's just
Yes,
curiosity.
I'm located in Turkey Point.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
That's what I wanted. Sorry. Okay. Thanks for your input. I don't know that we can answer your questions directly, but it's not a 3-story building. is it? It's a two-story building. We don't approve three-story buildings in Turkey Point ever. As far as drainage goes, there has to be a drainage plan put in place by Public Works, and it has to be agreeable to Public Works that it will work, and then they see it and they follow it through and they make sure it's done according to the drawings so that it does work. As far as sustainability goes, we don't deal with Turkey Point. We deal with each one individually, and we make sure it is sustainable.
And do you have a format of sustainability to deal with these things so that Turkey Point doesn't end up looking like Manhattan and then begin sinking into the sand? Do you have, measures of sustainability that you use? For example, when you begin to occupy more land, the water has to go somewhere, and there's not suitable drainage down there now. Many of the buildings in the area have sunk, and so the 9 meter height, I've noticed that there's about 5 buildings, all residences, that are 3 stories and then a roof. And honestly, I don't think that's sustainable.
Well, again, I think our measure of sustainability, and I won't speak for the planners, is that simply the drawings are made out by professionals to fit the land and are designed and signed for, and then they're followed through by the building department, make sure they're done the way they were planned. And part of the plan is to make sure that it will last. So having a separate rule called sustainability, we don't have that.
Is that something that you think Norfolk County should have and should be a consideration in light of the fact that we do have a World Biosphere Reserve in the county?
We're not here to debate what we should have or shouldn't have. We're here to debate this application on its own merits right now. But Dan?
Okay, Mr. Barker, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Could I suggest that Mr. Newell take this to the council? We have discussed some of these issues with the council. The council has given us the rules. We deal with inches and feet and millimeters and meters, up and down and across. We deal with size of land. We do not deal with the kind of questions you told us about today. I would suggest that you make an appointment with the county council and present this to the county council. It is not for us to do.
Thank you, Dan. So, I did have a motion already. It was moved by Rudy, seconded by Dennis. And the motion is to approve the application to construct a vacation home with requiring relief of 1.5 meters from the maximum height of 7.5 to permit a 9 meter height, and 2.42% from the maximum permitted lot coverage of 15% to permit a coverage of 17.42%. In accordance with Section 45(1) of the Planning Act, the proposed development requested relief is considered appropriate, minor, maintains the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, and that that public input was received and has been considered as part of this application. There. Any further comments? Those in favor? Motion's carried. BN 090, I guess is it Bradley Squires? I got that right? Anyone here for this application? Okay, great, thank you. Anyone else? We'll have the planner explain the report then.
The subject lands are a grass parcel containing a hedge and several trees measuring .52 acres in size. The lands front onto the south side of 3rd Concession Road in the former geographic township of South Walsingham and are part of a larger 49-acre farm parcel, which contains a single detached dwelling and several farm buildings. Surrounding lands in all directions are in active agricultural production. The applicant has applied to sever a parcel of land and add it to the residential property directly adjacent to the subject lands for the purposes of a windbreak, to include the well on the east side of the lot, and for nitrate dilution. The provincial policy statement and official plan both permit minor boundary adjustments in the agricultural designation. The subject lands are zoned agricultural and comply with the provisions of the zoning bylaw. It is the professional opinion of community planning staff that the subject application complies with the policies of the provincial policy statement and conforms to the intent of the Norfolk County official plan regarding a boundary adjustment in the agricultural designation. Staff support this application and recommend that it be approved, subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the planner? No? Discussion? Motion? Any seconders? I have a motion by Marcel, seconded by Dennis, that the committee hereby approves the application to to sever a parcel with the frontage of 36.5 meters, a width of 74.7 meters, a depth of 56.4 meters, an area of 0.52 acres as a boundary adjustment, and the lands are to be added to the existing residential parcel located immediately adjacent to the subject lands, with the roll number ending in 27600, making its final lot size 1.04 acres. The subject application complies with the provincial policy statement, Norfolk County official plan regarding boundary adjustments and the agricultural designation, and that no public input was received, therefore not considered as part of this decision. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. AN087S Land Development Corporation. Mr. Higgins? Anyone else? Oh. Okay. Did you get that, Neil? We'll have the planner explain the report. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. In regards to the application, it is for reduction to a landscape strip from the required 3 meters to 0.03 meters for a proposed commercial development. Subject lands are located on the Queensway and back out onto to Cedar Street. The access and everything will be maintained from Queensway. The subject application is going through site plan control, where a lot of the technical details and functional aspects of the proposal are being reviewed and evaluated. And as part of that review, the request for reduction to the landscape strip has been requested. The subject lands are designated commercial in the Norfolk County official plan and zoned service commercial with a special provision on the subject lands. The proposed building is permitted within the subject zoning. Based on continued work, planning staff are not recommending support of this application, as we feel the landscape strip is an important component of development, and that it is creates both a visual and functional buffer between the proposed development and the municipal right-of-way road allowance. Based on the foregoing, as I said, planning staff are recommending refusal of the application. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Any questions of the planner? Rebuttal?
Good evening. This property was purchased by Mr. Ed Bain in order to develop a commercial plaza as visioned by Shannon. It was under, at one point in time being looked at to develop the retirement home that's on Cedar Street. So that developer had a phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 environmental report done, and also geotechnical report. And it was determined based upon that information that the site was not suitable for residential use and commercial use was the best thing, was the best and highest use for the property. The reports also pointed out there was a number of chemicals found on the property, and the big words I can't really say in them. One was petroleum hydrocarbons and polycycloaromatic hydrocarbons. And reports, the environmental reports further went on to say that the best thing for this site is to encapsulate it. And to encapsulate it basically means a large plaza with a big parking lot. So the landscape strip was not envisioned in the environmental reports based upon the fact that they were looking at encapsulation and not grass. You look at the Queensway, and the Queensway, there's very few landscape strips along the Queensway that aren't actually in the boulevard. A lot of the properties don't have landscape strips. In fact, there was a new gas station that was proposed right near the bulk barn, and that was on a contaminated site also, and there is no landscape strip on there. It should be noted that the new zoning bylaw came in 2014, and it basically perpetuated what the landscape strip was in the old Simcoe zoning bylaw. The Simcoe zoning bylaw contained that landscape strip too. Now, all the uses along the Queensway that have been approved, such as the VW dealer, the Travel Lodge, the Dairy Queen, the TSC, the Home Hardware, the Employment Center, the Walmart. There's a very small landscape strip on the Walmart, very small landscape strip other than the Boulevard and the Walmart and the Canadian Tire. And all those don't have landscape strips. They're developed right to the property line. Now, this site here, what we're proposing is not having a landscape strip, basically because there's a very large boulevard in front of it, and that will be part of the landscape strip. The report further goes on to say that it doesn't meet the requirements of the Planning Act with respect to the tests for minor variance. Those tests include, does the proposal maintain the general intent of the proposed official plan? Yes, it does. It's commercially designated. It's a commercial use proposed. Does the proposed proposal maintain the general intent of the zoning bylaw? Yes, it does, because it's a commercial, designated commercially zoned, and we're proposing commercial uses without a landscape strip. Is the proposal desirable and appropriate for the development and the use of the land? Yes, it is, because it's commercial uses. It fronts on the Queensway, and the Queensway is a commercial area. Majority of the land along the Queensway is zoned service commercial, as this site is zoned service commercial. Is a proposal minor? Well, the impact of the not having a landscape strip and just using the boulevard, similar to what other uses have done along the Queensway, would be non-existent, and it would be minor in my opinion. So I would say that the proposal is in keeping with the official plan, is in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw, and is in keeping with the environmental reports on the property. That's not suggesting that it has landscape strips. The development makes use of an underutilized parcel of land that's been designated as a brownfield, that's everybody's recognized as a brownfield. It will provide economic development and jobs to the community, thus creating an environment, a stable environment for the town of Simcoe. And the development is appropriate, and the variance is minor and represents good planning, in my opinion. Now, Mr. Ed Bain would like to say a few words.
Okay, just a quick question when I think about it. How much boulevard is there from like the edge of the road to your property line already?
Presently, there's 32 feet.
30, so
Even if you widen the road, there would still be somewhere around 15 to 16 feet.
So there is space there, but you don't own that space, that's the town space.
That's the town space.
But it is there, okay.
But again, it's subject to site plan approval, and I understand the ditch will be filled in, but Mr. Bain has a presentation he'd like to.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Ed Bain, Managing Director of SLD Corporation. Dr. Agnes Shangler is a doctor here. She's the owner of the development. As Michael proceeded, that we need relief of this landscapescape, and you'll note that you have some three overviews of a aerial photo, a site plan, and the rendering showing the boulevard. And I'm going to address that after I speak with respect to my overview summary based on our look at this development. And this is a 5.2 acre commercial brownfield site contaminated. The existing 5.2 acre brownfield site was proposed to be developed in the year of 2013 as a residential low-rise senior apartment building, which includes a full basement, full green grass landscaping, side, front, and backyards on the 5 acres. Due to the contamination, various issues such as underlying peat moss, etc., water tables, a phase 1 and 2 environmental report was requested and completed November the 13th, which we have in our possession by the previous residential developer to determine the level of contamination. The report stated the level of contamination, peat moss, etc., on this site would not allow for residential development. So therefore, the residential development was denied based on the phase 1 and 2 report.